Ethan Harper sat at his desk, the fluorescent office lights casting a pale glow over the scattered papers and half-empty coffee mugs. He stared blankly at the spreadsheet on his laptop, though the numbers blurred together, meaningless. Lately, everything felt muted. Work, home, even the life he had carefully built with Clara. Their marriage was solid, in the eyes of anyone else. But inside, he felt an unspoken distance, a growing void he didn't quite know how to fill. Clara Winslow, his wife of 6 years, was the kind of woman who noticed the smallest things, a crooked picture frame, a faint change in expression. But lately, she seemed wrapped up in her own world. Between her work at the nonprofit and the volunteer programs she passionately ran, she barely had time to notice the quiet weight settling on Ethan's shoulders. She had always been patient, understanding, forgiving. And yet, even her patience couldn't stretch into the corners of his silent discontent. That morning, she had kissed him goodbye with a warmth that would normally make him smile. "Don't work too hard today," she'd said, her eyes full of concern. And yet, as soon as she left, Ethan felt a pang of guilt. Why did her presence make him anxious instead of comforted? Why did he crave something he couldn't even define? It was at the office that he first noticed Lily Monroe. She had joined the team a few weeks ago, a new project manager assigned to collaborate with Ethan on an upcoming campaign. Lily was sharp, quick-witted, and somehow disarmingly approachable. She had a smile that lingered, a warmth that made people lean in when she spoke. At first, Ethan told himself it was nothing more than professional admiration. But there was a spark in her attention, a subtle focus on him that he hadn't realized he had been missing. "Ethan, do you have a moment to go over these numbers?" Lily asked, her tone light but insistent. He nodded, gathering the papers. As they walked side by side through the quiet corridors of the office, he felt a strange combination of excitement and guilt. He tried to remind himself that he was happily married. He loved Clara. He really did. But something about Lily's presence stirred feelings he hadn't felt in years. They settled in a conference room, the hum of the air conditioner filling the silence. Lily leaned over the papers, pointing out details Ethan had overlooked. Her fingers brushed his hand briefly, and though it was accidental, Ethan felt a jolt, a sudden awareness that made him uncomfortable and strangely alive at the same time. "I appreciate your attention to detail," Ethan said, trying to focus on the work rather than the rush of heat that had crept into his chest. Lily's smile was easy, effortless, but her eyes held something more, a curiosity, a recognition of his inner tension. "You're under a lot of pressure, aren't you?" she asked softly, not prying, just observing that he hesitated. Normally, he would have brushed off such a comment, but something in the way she spoke made him pause, as though she could see the cracks he carefully hid from everyone else. "I guess I've been feeling a little stretched thin," he admitted, more than he intended. Lily nodded, leaning back slightly. "It's hard when you're balancing so many responsibilities. Sometimes it helps to have someone listen." Ethan looked at her, and in that moment, he realized how little he had shared with Clara about the weight he carried. He hadn't wanted to burden her, hadn't wanted to shatter the careful rhythm of their life together. But here, in the quiet office, someone seemed to see him, really see him. Meanwhile, back at home, Clara prepared dinner, humming softly, unaware of the storm brewing in Ethan's mind. She set the table meticulously, arranging the cutlery and plates just as Ethan liked. She had been trying to recapture the warmth they once shared, planning small surprises, thoughtful gestures, hoping to bridge the subtle gap that had formed between them. Yet, every smile she offered was met with his distracted nods, his mind elsewhere. That evening, Ethan returned home with a tightness in his chest. Clara greeted him at the door with a kiss, her hand lingering on his arm. "You've been quiet today. Everything okay?" she asked, her voice tinged with worry. He forced a smile. "Just tired," he replied. But the words felt hollow, and Clara, perceptive as ever, frowned slightly before letting it go. After dinner, Ethan found himself scrolling through emails, unable to focus. His thoughts kept drifting back to Lily, her laugh, the way she had tilted her head when she listened, the spark in her eyes when she noticed his struggles. He felt a pang of guilt so sharp it almost made him wince. He loved Clara, truly, but the allure of being understood in ways he hadn't been for years was intoxicating. Late that night, as he lay beside Clara, he felt her warmth, her steady breathing, and yet he couldn't shake the restlessness inside him. It was as if two versions of himself were waging a quiet battle. The man who wanted to honor the life he had built, and the man who was suddenly aware of the excitement and possibility he had been missing. He closed his eyes, trying to sleep, but images of Lily's smile lingered, haunting him in the quiet darkness. Somewhere deep down, he knew that what he felt wasn't just admiration. It was the beginning of a temptation he wasn't sure he was ready to face. And so, with the night pressing in around him and the soft sounds of Clara's breathing beside him, Ethan Harper realized that life, as he knew it, was about to change. The quiet discontent he had ignored for so long had found a spark, and he was powerless to ignore it any longer. Days turned into weeks, and the presence of Lily Monroe in Ethan Harper's life became impossible to ignore. At first, their interactions had been strictly professional. Quick meetings, brief consultations, shared deadlines. But gradually, the lines began to blur. Ethan found himself lingering in conversations with her, drawn to the ease of her company, the way she seemed to understand him without judgment. He hadn't realized how starved he was for that kind of attention until it existed in front of him, palpable and immediate. Lily had a way of asking the right questions, probing just enough to make him think, to make him open up. "You seem distracted today," she said one afternoon, leaning casually against the doorframe of his office. Her gaze was gentle, not accusatory, but it carried a weight he couldn't dismiss. I've just been juggling a lot," Ethan replied, rubbing the back of his neck. He could feel his pulse quicken at her presence, though he tried to mask it with a calm exterior. "Want to grab a coffee?" she suggested. There was nothing unusual in the offer, and yet something about the way she asked felt personal, as though she was offering more than just caffeine, an understanding, a reprieve from the monotony of his days. Ethan hesitated. Clara would never approve of him spending extra time with another woman, even innocently, and yet he felt compelled to accept, as though some part of him wanted to explore this unexpected connection. "Sure," he said finally, trying to sound casual. The cafe was quiet, tucked into a corner of the city, far enough from prying eyes to allow for conversation without interruption. Lily ordered a latte and sat across from him, her notebook open but momentarily forgotten. Ethan found himself talking about things he hadn't voiced in years: work frustrations, personal doubts, fleeting dreams he had abandoned. Lily listened intently, nodding, occasionally offering a comment that revealed she was not just hearing his words but understanding them. "You've been carrying a lot on your shoulders," she said softly. "It's no wonder you seem so tense sometimes." Her observation cut through him more deeply than he expected. How had he let himself carry this weight alone for so long? How had he become so distant from Clara, the woman who had once been his confidant? And yet, in that moment, the guilt and confusion mingled with a strange exhilaration. He felt alive, seen in a way that was foreign yet intoxicating. After that day, small interactions with Lily became a highlight of his routine. Emails lingered longer than necessary, meetings extended just slightly, and casual conversations slipped into personal territory. She laughed at his dry humor, teased him gently, and encouraged him in ways that made him feel competent, capable, admired. Each moment, though innocent on the surface, pulled him closer, tugged at corners of his heart he had thought long dormant. Meanwhile, Clara noticed the subtle changes in Ethan. He was more distracted at home, often lost in thought during their conversations. She tried to bridge the distance, preparing his favorite meals, suggesting weekend plans, even leaving little notes from him find, but he seemed only partially present, physically there but mentally elsewhere. She didn't know what had shifted between them, only that the warmth of their early years had dimmed, and that realization pained her deeply. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Ethan stayed late to finish a report. Lily found him in the empty office, the dim glow of his desk lamp illuminating his thoughtful expression. "You're still here?" she asked, concern flickering in her eyes. "I wanted to finish this before tomorrow," he said, but when he looked at her, he realized he was relieved for her presence. "It's easier when someone's around," he added, almost reluctantly. She smiled softly, understanding the unspoken words. "I get it," she said. "Sometimes it's just nice to have someone who gets what you're going through." It was innocent, harmless, yet Ethan felt the familiar stirring of guilt and fascination. He wanted to tell Clara everything, to confess the emotional connection forming here, but he knew he couldn't. Not yet. Not until he understood it himself. As days passed, Ethan began noticing how much he craved Lily's input, her perspective, her validation. It wasn't physical desire, at least not yet, but something subtler, a yearning for intimacy of a different kind. He recognized the danger, the way his mind lingered on her after meetings, the way he caught himself imagining conversations that hadn't happened. And still, he justified it to himself, telling his conscience that he was merely connecting with a friend, that nothing had crossed a line. Clara, perceptive as ever, started confiding in her friend Nathan Cross about her worries. "I don't know what's happening with Ethan," she admitted one evening over coffee. "He's present but distant. I feel like I'm losing him slowly, and I don't know why." Nathan, ever pragmatic, gave her a steady gaze. "You need to talk to him, Clara. Don't wait for something small to become something irreversible. Ask him directly what's weighing on him." Clara nodded, but the words didn't lessen the ache in her chest. She wanted to fix things, to restore the closeness they once had, but the invisible wall growing between them left her feeling powerless. Meanwhile, Ethan struggled with the duality of his emotions. Every conversation with Lily left him exhilarated yet guilty. Every smile a reminder of what he was withholding from Clara. He knew he was treading dangerous ground, but he couldn't seem to stop. Lily had become a mirror of what he had been missing: attention, understanding, excitement. And the more he engaged with her, the more he felt the tension between duty and desire. By the end of the week, Ethan realized he was at a crossroads. The bond forming with Lily had become undeniable, emotional in ways that frightened him. He loved Clara. He truly did. Yet he felt drawn to someone else, to a connection that made him feel both alive and terribly guilty. That night, as he walked home, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement, Ethan's mind replayed the week in fragments. Lily's laughter, the intensity of their shared discussions, the warmth of her gaze. He felt the weight of choice pressing down on him, knowing that one misstep could irreparably change his life. And in the quiet solitude of that walk, he admitted to himself the truth he had been avoiding. The temptation wasn't fleeting, it was growing, and he didn't know how long he could resist it. The tension in Ethan Harper's life had reached a point where every glance, every word, every pause carried weight. At home, Clara Winslow sensed the shift more acutely with each passing day. The quiet dinners they shared were heavy with unspoken words. Ethan's mind seemed elsewhere, and even when he tried to engage, the subtle distance lingered. Clara, ever perceptive, felt it like a shadow crossing her heart. She had begun to notice the small things, the way he picked at his food, the subtle sighs when she asked about his day, the way his eyes briefly flicked toward the window, as if searching for someone else. "Ethan, are you really listening to me?" Clara asked one evening, placing her hand gently over his. Her voice was calm, but carried the weight of concern that had been growing for weeks. Ethan blinked, suddenly aware that he had been lost in thought, recalling Lily's quick smile and easy laughter from earlier in the week. "I'm sorry," he said, forcing a smile. "I just had a lot on my mind today." Clara didn't reply immediately. She studied him carefully, her brow furrowing slightly. "You've been distant for a while now. I feel like there's something you're not telling me," she said softly, her voice steady but tinged with hurt. Ethan felt a pang of guilt, sharper than any he had felt before. He wanted to confide in Clara, to admit the emotional closeness he had developed with Lily, but the words caught in his throat. How could he explain a bond that was neither physical nor easily defined, yet carried the weight of temptation? How could he articulate the confusion of feeling alive with someone else while still loving the woman who had built a life with him? At the office, the tension between Ethan and Lily had grown as well, though subtly. Conversations lingered longer, casual texts stretched into the night, and Ethan found himself looking forward to moments when he could confide in her, even in the smallest ways. One afternoon, while reviewing a presentation together, Lily's hand brushed his as she pointed to a chart. The touch was fleeting, accidental, yet it sent a shock of awareness through him. He pulled his hand back quickly, suddenly hyper-aware of the line he was approaching. "You okay?" Lily asked, her tone light, teasing even, but there was a hint of concern beneath it. "Yeah, just tired," he replied, forcing casualness he didn't feel. He wanted to tell her to stop, to step back, to respect the life he had with Clara, but he also couldn't deny the thrill, the sense of being seen, that came with her attention. Clara, meanwhile, confided in her close friend Nathan Cross about the growing unease she felt. They sat in her living room one rainy afternoon, the sound of droplets against the window a quiet accompaniment to her voice. "I don't know what's happening with Ethan," Clara admitted, wrapping her hands around a cup of tea. "He's here, but he's not. It's like he's carrying something I can't reach. I feel it in every conversation, every glance. I don't know how to bridge the gap." Nathan, ever the pragmatic friend, leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You can't force him to talk, Clara, but you can create space for honesty. Ask him directly. Don't wait for the distance to grow into a canyon." Clara nodded, though the anxiety in her chest persisted. She wanted to fight for their relationship, to restore the closeness that had once been effortless, but the invisible barrier between them left her feeling powerless. One evening, Ethan returned home later than usual, the city streets glistening under streetlights as rain fell softly. Clara had prepared a simple dinner, hoping to create a space where they could reconnect. She greeted him with a tentative smile, her hand brushing his as he entered the apartment. "Dinner's ready," she said gently. "I thought we could sit and catch up, just us." Ethan's throat tightened. He loved her, truly, yet he felt the pull of the emotional connection with Lily lingering in his mind. He wanted to be fully present, but the weight of unspoken feelings made it almost impossible. He forced himself to sit, to engage, to smile at the familiar rhythm of home, but the sense of dissonance was undeniable. Over the next few days, Ethan found himself at a crossroads more acutely than ever. Every interaction with Lily reminded him of the life he longed for, the attention, the understanding, the effortless companionship. But every thought of Clara reminded him of commitment, love, and the life they had built together. The conflict gnawed at him, each choice he made feeling like a betrayal of some part of himself. Then came the subtle signs that Clara was beginning to notice the depth of his emotional distance. She found a message on his laptop accidentally left open, a note from Lily thanking him for his insight on a project, casual and professional in words, but laden with warmth. Clara's stomach tightened as she read it. She closed the laptop slowly, heart racing, trying to process the unease she felt. She didn't want to accuse, didn't want to assume, but the evidence of a connection that had grown in secret made her anxious and wary. Ethan, unaware that Clara had glimpsed the message, continued his routine at home and work, each day feeling the tension build. Conversations with Lily became more personal, more confiding, though he carefully maintained boundaries to avoid crossing lines. Yet even the emotional intimacy, the shared thoughts and small secrets, made him question the loyalty and strength of his own heart. The conflict reached a silent climax one evening when Clara attempted a heart-to-heart conversation. She had planned a quiet dinner, candles lit, a favorite playlist humming softly in the background. "Ethan, I need to know what's going on," Clara said, her voice steady but firm. "I can feel you drifting away, and I don't want to lose what we have. Please be honest with me." Ethan felt the walls of his carefully constructed defenses crumble. He opened his mouth, intending to speak, to apologize, to explain the confusion and the pull of emotions he didn't fully understand. And yet, the words faltered, tangled in guilt and fear. He couldn't bring himself to say Lily's name. Not yet that Clara's eyes search his face, seeing both love and hesitation, devotion, and distance. She didn't yet have all the answers, but she felt the storm gathering between them, a force that could either destroy or transform their marriage. That night, as they went to bed, Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the weight of his choices pressing down on him. The emotional connection he had with Lily was undeniable, but so was his love for Clara. He understood, perhaps for the first time, that every moment of temptation carried consequences. The path ahead was uncertain, and he couldn't predict whether he would stumble or find a way to reconcile his desires with his commitment. And so, the stage was set. The tension between loyalty and longing, between love and temptation, had reached a tipping point. Ethan Harper knew that the coming days would demand clarity, courage, and perhaps the hardest choices of his life. It was a rainy evening, the kind of rain that made the city shimmer with reflections, when Ethan finally decided to confront his own heart. Clara had just returned from work, carrying her umbrella and a faint smile that masked the worry she had been holding for days. Ethan met her in the living room, his hands fidgeting, his heart racing. "Clara, we need to talk," he said quietly, his voice low but deliberate. She turned to him, her eyes searching his, already bracing for what she feared yet hoped to hear. Clara's hand instinctively reached for his, a gesture of support, but also a quiet plea. "I've been waiting for this," she said softly. "I want honesty, Ethan. Please." He drew a deep breath, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "I made mistakes, Clara. I've allowed myself to get close to someone else emotionally. Nothing physical, nothing beyond conversations and moments of connection, but it's still a betrayal of what we have. And I'm sorry, truly sorry, for hiding it from you, for letting it grow." Clara's eyes filled with hurt, the sharp edge of betrayal cutting through her calm demeanor. She sat down slowly, the air between them thick with tension. "Why, Ethan? Why let it happen? Why not tell me when it started?" Ethan's shoulders slumped. "I was confused. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could manage it, that I could keep it from affecting us. But in trying to protect us, I ended up creating distance instead. I see that now." Silence hung for a moment, broken only by the soft patter of rain against the windows. Clara's mind raced, processing the admission, the emotion raw and complex. She felt anger, sadness, and a quiet ache. But beneath it all, she recognized the sincerity in Ethan's eyes. There was regret, and there was a willingness to confront the consequences. "You're lucky I love you," Clara said finally, her voice trembling slightly. "But love alone can't fix everything. Trust has to be rebuilt, Ethan. We can't pretend this didn't happen." "I know," he replied, the words heavy with acknowledgement. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes. I want to rebuild what I almost destroyed. I want us to be honest, to communicate, to be present with each other again. And I need to end the emotional closeness with Lily. I can't continue down that path. It's not fair to you or to us." Clara nodded, appreciating the clarity of his intentions. "It will take time," she said, "and I need to see that change, feel it, not just hear it." Ethan reached for her hands, holding them gently. "I understand. I'm willing to do the work. I love you, Clara, and I don't want to lose what we have." The next few days were a test of resolve. Ethan minimized his interactions with Lily at work, keeping all conversations strictly professional and, when possible, delegating tasks that required extended discussion. It was not easy. The emotional connection had been intoxicating, a pull he had never expected. Yet every reminder of Clara's pain strengthened his determination. Lily noticed the change, of course. One afternoon, she approached him in the office with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Ethan, you've been distant. Did I do something wrong?" He shook his head, choosing his words carefully. "No, Lily. It's nothing you did. It's me. I need to refocus on my life, my priorities. I have responsibilities that I need to honor, and I'm committed to repairing the balance I've lost." She studied him silently for a moment, then gave a small, understanding nod. "I get it," she said, the warmth in her voice tempered by respect. "I hope things work out." Clara, meanwhile, noticed the changes as well. Ethan began spending more intentional time with her, quiet dinners, walks in the park, late-night conversations where they shared hopes, frustrations, and dreams as they had in the early days of their marriage. The small gestures mattered, remembering details from their conversations, leaving little notes of encouragement, simply being present in ways that had been missing for months. Nathan Cross checked in with Clara from time to time, offering support and perspective. Change isn't instantaneous, he reminded her one afternoon. But if he's showing consistency, that's a good sign. Trust is rebuilt over time, not overnight. Clara reflected on that advice as she watched Ethan laugh at something trivial during breakfast, the familiar warmth returning in small, precious moments. She knew the road ahead would have challenges, that scars remained, but she also recognized the effort, the sincerity, and the love that had brought them to this point of reconnection. Ethan, too, felt the relief of truth and the burden lifted by confession. The tension that had consumed him for weeks began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious hope. He understood that mistakes could never be erased, but accountability, honesty, and deliberate actions could guide them back toward each other. That'd be why the end of the week, the house felt lighter, though the lessons of the past lingered in subtle ways. Ethan and Clara spent the evening together on the couch, a soft blanket over their laps, watching the rain streak the windows. They didn't need words to communicate. The closeness of shared space, the warmth of presence, and the quiet acknowledgement of past struggles spoke volumes. Ethan reached for Clara's hand, intertwining fingers, and felt a renewed sense of purpose. "We'll get through this," he said quietly. Clara smiled, squeezing his hand. "Yes, we will. Together." And in that moment, the storm of temptation and conflict that had threatened to pull them apart began to settle. The path forward was neither easy nor perfect, but it was real, grounded in honesty and effort. They had faced the consequences of emotional distance, confronted the allure of distraction, and chosen each other, reaffirming the bond that had weathered challenges before and would continue to grow stronger. Outside, the rain had slowed, leaving the streets glistening and calm. Inside, Ethan and Clara Harper sat together, not as two individuals separated by misunderstanding and temptation, but as partners committed to rebuilding trust, love, and connection. The past remained a cautionary tale, but the present offered hope, and in that hope, they found the courage to move forward.